In December 1989, after 43 years of courageous service in the underground, the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church had its rights restored. In the western Ukraine, people exhumed the many victims of Stalinist terror and arranged their decent Christian reburial. In January 1990, to commemorate the anniversary of the Ukrainian State Reunion Act, Ruch organized a tremendous living chain, formed by over 1 million people joining the two historic capitals of Kyiv and Lviv. However, in the elections to the local self-government councils, the Democratic bloc obtained only 25% of the seats in parliament. Only in the western Ukraine, the Democrats won all the seats in local elections and hoisted a blue and yellow flag on Lviv's town hall. On the 16th of July, Parliament adopted the Declaration of Sovereignty of the Ukraine within the structure of the Soviet Union, and so anti-communist attitudes and aspirations of independence began to gain momentum in the country. New political parties sprang up whilst monuments to Lenin were pulled down and Soviet flags were being increasingly replaced by Ukrainian banners. In the meantime, the Soviet-based system had already collapsed in Poland, Hungary and Czechoslovakia, and the Berlin Wall had fallen. The Second Congress of Ruch put forward a new goal: to gain full independence. A hunger strike of students in the center of Kyiv, supported by mass demonstrations, forced the authorities to remove the clause on the governing role of the Communist Party from the constitution. The most entrenched communists wanted to suppress the protesters with the help of the army, as had been the case in Riga and Vilnius. But the new head of the parliament, Leonid Kravchuk, emphatically condemned such an idea. By that time, differences in perceiving the nature of the relationship between central government in Moscow and the republics had become quite obvious. While Gorbachev sought to preserve the Soviet Union at any price, the Republican leaders, such as Yeltsin or Kravchuk, wanted to do away with the central bodies and the constitution of the USSR, and instead sign bilateral agreements of cooperation directly between sovereign republics. The results of the All-Union referendum, held in March 1991, provided the nationalist communists with additional reasoning. Although 70% of the population of the Soviet Ukraine voted for the preservation of the Soviet Union, as many as 80% supported the idea of strengthening the national sovereignty of the Ukraine. The local authorities in Western Ukraine, mostly Democrats, added one more question: do you support the unconditional independence of the Ukraine? Yes was the answer of almost 90% of respondents. After the referendum, a surge of strikes swept across the Republic. The strikes were mostly of a political character. Workers of the East and the South, including the miners of the Donbass, were demanding independence for the Ukraine under blue and yellow banners. It is very likely that the Ukraine would not have been able to leave the Soviet Union by itself. But then the effects of the 19th of August 1991 gave further support following the attempted coup d'etat of conservative communist hardliners aimed at overthrowing Gorbachev and doing away with perestroika. Although the coup was soon suppressed, it made people aware of the possibility of return to Stalin years of suppression. This became another reason for finally breaking away from the Kremlin's grip. The session of the Ukrainian Parliament on the 24th of August 1991 was accompanied by a mass demonstration. Almost unanimously, Parliament proclaimed the independence of the Ukraine. On the 1st of December, over 90% of the citizens taking part in an all-Ukrainian referendum confirmed the proclamation and voted for their country's independence. On the next day, Ukraine was recognized by Poland, Hungary and Canada, and a short time later by other countries too. How did it happen that the independence came so relatively easily and without bloodshed? Gorbachev had tried to reform the unreformable system by his perestroika. As soon as the repressive system gave way, the monolith supported by terror and fear began to crack up. For different reasons, independence was sought by both the Republic's party elite and the democratic opposition, by the nationalists of the western Ukraine and the coal miners of the Donbass. Whatever the reasons, they all had one common goal: independence. At the time of the referendum, a presidential election was held. Leonid Kravchuk won it convincingly, having defeated, among others, the leader of Ruch, Vyacheslav Chornovil. Soon afterwards, the Ukrainian parliament, Verkhovna Rada, approved the national flag, emblem and anthem, all having been previously proposed by the Ukrainian People's Republic of 1918 to 1920. The referendum turned out to be the last nail hammered in the coffin of the Soviet Union. On the 8th of December 1991, in Bieloveska Pushcha, Boris Yeltsin on behalf of Russia, Stanisław Shushkevich on behalf of Belarusia, and Leonid Kravchuk on behalf of the Ukraine dissolved the Soviet Union and proclaimed the formation of the Commonwealth of Independent States. Whilst Yeltsin may have regarded the Commonwealth as the USSR too, Kravchuk looked upon it as the Soviet Union's liquidation committee. When Boris Yeltsin said to me, "Gorbachev entrusted me with asking you a question, will you sign the new Union Treaty if all the amendments you want are included?" I answered, "No, I will not sign any new treaty. Only 1 month ago I would have signed it, but now that the referendum had been carried out in the Ukraine and over 90% of the people have voted for independence, and I have been elected president of an independent Ukraine, how can I possibly act against the will of the people? It is out of the question. Tell me, if you were in a similar situation, would you sign the Union Treaty?" He said, "No, I won't sign it either." That is why in contemporary history, and Yeltsin knows it too, and Russian historians write about it, the main cause of the breakup of the Soviet Union was the Ukraine. The beginning was not easy for the young state. Ukrainian industry, integrated as it had been with the industries of the other republics of the USSR, became paralyzed, and unemployment rose sharply as a result. The Moscow Central Bank curtailed any further delivery of rubles, leaving the fledgling government with a pension crisis that it attempted to deal with by the printing of makeshift money in the form of coupons, the effect of which was to trigger enormous inflation and panic buying, which led to the disappearance of the most basic essentials from the shelves. In 1994, in the atmosphere of social tension, the date of the presidential election was brought forward. The victor, Leonid Kuchma, went on to serve 2 terms as president. A qualified engineer and Director General of Yuzhmash, one of the world's biggest producers of spacecraft and missiles, Kuchma had already proved his ability to deal with crises by saving the Ukrainian aviation and missile industry from bankruptcy. Later, his efforts would bear fruit in the shape of a joint American-Ukrainian project termed the Sea Start. But upon being sworn in as president, Kuchma was faced with an even greater problem: the poverty and despair of the Ukrainian people. Kuchma's undeniable achievements include introducing the hryvnia, the national currency, reducing inflation, regulating the market, and launching economic reforms and privatization measures. And, of course, the adoption in 1996 of the new constitution of the Ukraine. One effect of the revival of the economy was a sudden boom in construction, which also saw the restoration and rebuilding of churches and temples which had been destroyed